programs, they have roads, they have prisons, they have everything that we have here. How are they doing it? What makes you think that we can't do it? The state of Wyoming has half the population of Northern California, and they're well off, but they don't have industry. How are they doing it? Oil. Oil? Well, we have oil. It's called water.
We have lumber.
That's our oil.
Slow down. Madam Clerk, would you call the roll?
Supervisor Chapman?
No.
Supervisor Alba?
Aye.
Supervisor
Aye.
Supervisor Kyle?
Take a chance.
Do something.
Quiet. Vote passes. 3-1.
Cool.
Board, like to finish the agenda up. I think it's only two. 5-minute break. Too late to get. Going to much water. Okay, we're going to start the meeting. Hey guys, we got the right Quiet. Yeah, we're on 6. Finish 6. Richard. Yeah.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, and Madam Clerk. Today we have brought the mid-year budget for the Community Corrections Partnership. One of the objects in that is to establish the program coordinator who will provide some oversight of the services and reporting and project management for our day reporting center. They'll also work on coordinating the transition from jail to the day reporting center to probation to reduce disruptions in services to offenders. That would take the approval of the job description and to allocate the position. We're also looking at allocating a position for a jail sergeant. They need to have that position there to provide some of the oversight of the offenders and the programs while they're in custody. And it will allow the current sergeant that's residing in the jail to go back to patrol so that they will be able to fill some sort of shortages in that area. And that would take allocating the position to the 138. We would also ask to look at dedicating $150,000 to the 1380551 so that we could look at planning for a modular purchase in order to house the day reporting center. And we need that for space to provide services, and it'll reduce the amount of missed appointments that some of our offenders have. We would also like that to be Medi-Cal approved so that alcohol and drug and mental health would be able to do the certification to provide services there, so we would work with Mel Shop for that.
Where's this day reporting center going to be at?
It would be the planning for it is near the jail at the Sheriff's Department, so that they can provide assistance when they when offenders are over at the day reporting center, and you can also provide assistance in walking people back and forth and creating that successful transition in the continuum of services that they need. So
that modular or portable there, kind of just north of the parking lot for the main jail, kind of midway between their office and...
Yeah, we have been using that. It's not ideal just because we have offenders that report on a daily basis and work on cars and motor pool, and we have offenders out. It's not ideal for us having them come across the property right in front of the jail to that unsecured area. So we're looking at trying to research an option of putting a building over by our big evidence building.
Well, given that, what about the prospect of terminating our contract with the group home that's in the front part of what's considered the old juvenile hall thing, and converting that space to something like this here. It's closer to the street, and you wouldn't have those kind of issues too, but yet it would be within proximity of the program, both the juvenile hall program and the jail and the sheriff's office.
I think that you would look at some of the sight and sound separation issues with the Board of State and Community Corrections, because in that portion there, there's only partitioned walls. So some of that sound and part of it does go towards control.
Well, I mean, it obviously hasn't been an issue for a group home. I mean, I think that was supposed to be so that you don't have the two interacting with each other anyways. So I hear what you're saying, but I think that hasn't been an issue, and I think it could be utilized in a way where it would be the two facilities wouldn't necessarily know that each other existed on the other side of the divider that should exist there now, and could obviously be reinforced.
So is that the group home or the closed off portion of juvenile hall?
The closed off, well, no, you've got mothball part of it. You've got the original juvenile hall was here, and then they built this big massive one behind it. And so there's kind of like the divider. That old original part of the juvenile hall is what's been the group home that was, we own it, we built it, we're responsible for it, and we're getting chunk change for its use by a non-county entity, which I've always been amazed and, to be honest with you, not happy about. So, if we're looking for a space for a county-based function and stuff, why don't we use the space we have instead of having to go out and create new space because, we gave away the space we had to some private industry that we're subsidizing by the contract that we're subsidizing. I realize they're paying more than what they originally negotiated for, but to be honest with you, we spent over $100,000 remodeling it for them to use it as a group home, and then they charge us $8,000 or $10,000 a kid to be there and make big money off of the ones they bring in from out of the area as well. And we're the ones that get shortchanged, and I think that needs to stop.
Good. Any more questions, Jennifer?
Is that a possibility that might work, Jennifer? I know you haven't looked at it like that, but
I haven't, and it raises some concerns. It raises some initial issues, but I don't have the Title 15 or Title 24 regulations right in front of me to be able to look at some of that. We could definitely look to see if it's something that's possible. My biggest thing is that where the access is for that front end of the group home, they're going to be you've got adult offenders that are now walking around our backyard fence. So is that going to, open us up to contraband being thrown over the fence? I don't know.
Not if you design it correctly. I don't think that. You've got an entrance that comes onto the parking lot that's probably 25 to 30 feet from Chestnut Street, and that's where your entrance would be. If they're off wandering behind, into the fenced area, they can do that now anyway, irrespective of anything that has to do with that operating of the facility. So I think those things can be looked at and mitigated. What I recommend, Mr. Chairman, is that first of all, Jennifer inherited the whole thing. So none of this is because of her. She's having to deal with a set of cards that she basically inherited that was created years ago. And I think that it's a chance to maybe fix some of the problems that existed from years ago that you inherited. So it'd be worth looking at and give it a fair evaluation.
And I'd be willing to definitely explore that.
And if anybody could figure out how to make it work right, you'd be the person.
Thank you for your confidence. I think that one of the biggest points in that $150,000 is to look at, using $20,000 to $30,000 for planning. So it's definitely something that we could put on the table and we'd be able to look at and be able to discuss and weigh the options.
Good. Anybody care to make a motion?
I have another question.
Any questions?
The uniform allowance, you guys have to have uniforms?
We do not, however, the sheriff's department does. So the position for the sergeant does require a uniform allowance with their,
So that's your,
So this 150,000 when your capitalized equipment was doing this other thing that you were proposing?
for the modular purchase, and to look at anywhere from 20 to 30,000 to be able to use this fiscal year in the planning. And the rest to be used in the 15-16 year.
So we could potentially save a significant amount of money there instead of building, am I correct?
Well, whether it saves any money immediately, I think in the long run it saves a lot of money that we could potentially gain, but I think it's also brings us back to what our core purpose is, and in terms of using the resources that we already have for the purposes and needs that we have, rather than creating another, like, exception to the rule and creating additional, because now you've got, in addition to maintaining the facility or the building that is used by this group home, you're now going to have another building that you're going to have to maintain on the long term anyway. So the question is, you could probably make the argument that initially it's going to cost us more to renovate the existing space back to something they could utilize. But I think in the long term, you're going to save yourself the mutual cost. I mean, I don't think it's in our best interest to be providing space for group homes to operate as independent businesses. That was the fight we had 8 years ago, 10 years ago. It probably goes back even longer than that, because time flies.
Okay. Go.
Well, I understand what Mr. Jevin's saying, and I think what we probably do need is some funding to look into options for space for that program. And right now, with the transitioning in the future occurring with the county to a new building, there's going to be lots of movement. I mean, we would, it's table that portion, 150,000, except for it'd be nice if you consider allocating some money for maybe some space needs assessment or some research if we have to get a consultant or something to help us look at options even for the space Mr. Chapman's talking about. But the remainder could remain in that.
Well, what I would suggest, Mr. Chairman, because it takes a 4/5 vote for that, and I can guarantee you're not going to get 4/5 vote today, that we remove that 150,000 out of there. We go ahead and consider approving the other items on the agenda, and staff can come back to us with a thought-out alternative plan of how to do the very things that Dean's talking about in terms of looking at those, and give us a report that just focuses on that, and we can consider that budget adjustment at a future date. You have now until June 30th to square that away.
That's good.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, got a motion.
What's that?
That's a motion.
Yeah, I'll make a motion that we go ahead and make the adjustment to the salaries and supplies, and the salaries expenditure of 59,000, and then the service and supplies of 5,000. Those be approved, and then we decrease the expenditure line items in the two things that you had at the bottom. That requires a majority vote. This requires a 4/5 vote. And I would move that we do that minus the 150,000 for capitalized equipment.
I want to make sure we get the motion correct for Madam.
Wait a minute. Diane?
That approval of the creating a new position also has to be approved.
Well, that has to come as a separate action, or can that be part of the same action?
It's included as part of this action.
Okay, well, then
Yes,
it's
the budgetary issue, but also the creation of a new position.
Takes all four.
Well, the money part requires the 4/5. The job description or job position, creating it and doing that only requires a majority vote.
So do I understand the motion correct that essentially 1 through 7 are being moved for the approval except for number 5?
Yes.
So items 1 through 4 move for approval, and 6 and 7 as well? Is that the motion?
Okay, that's down at the bottom, you have to decrease and change those other.
Thank you. Was there a second on that?
We get a second? Yeah, I'm all second. Karen, you take
You
it.
get that?
You got any discussion? Madam Clerk, call the roll.
Supervisor Chapman?
Aye.
Supervisor Alba?
Aye.
Supervisor Hinkle?
Aye.
Supervisor Pyle?
Aye. Thank you, everybody, for your patience. 7, H
And
resolution.
the direction is they're going to come back with alternate alternatives as to what we could, and we may eventually come full circle and have to consider this same request, but at least we can have those other options.
And we can at least look into that.
So essentially, number 5 will be re-presented at a later date by staff for the purpose of respecting the board's comments.
Dr. Chair, that is standing correct.
Very good.
Thank you, Mr. Counsel, you're very,
I'm looking out for my clerk.
look out for all of us. Okay, I guess, Dave, you're up next, I think.
All right, Mr. Chairman, Board of Supervisors, Dean Groudon, Sheriff Coroner, item in front of you is related to the Edward Byrne Memorial Justice Assistance Grant. That is a grant that in previous years, or since the mid-'80s, has supported the regional drug task forces. That's federal money that comes through a designated state organization. It's under the control right now of the California Board of State Community Corrections. There's a lot of pressure to move that or free up the types of programs that funding can be used for. So the state changed their priorities on that funding and expanded the types of projects it could be used for and made it a competitive grant process this year. We had to, we worked together, Jen Branning, Mel Brawley, a number of other county stakeholders. We got together and talked about what we wanted to try to do with this project. We submitted an application. Mr. Egan did sign that application. We submitted it, and we actually scored 7 out of 28 small counties with our application, so we did pretty good. So we've received a conditional award. We do need, what I'm asking for in this item is for you to adopt a resolution granting the CAO the authority to sign the application, the grant agreement, and any amendments thereof. So he did already sign the original application. That had to be signed and submitted prior to them requiring a board resolution. But the grant is actually a 3-year grant, and in future years, in the second and third year, we'll have to do a supplemental application. That will be an RFA rather than an RFP, and Mr. Egan will need to have the authority to sign those also. So that is the action that I'm requesting, that you authorize him to sign the application, grant amendments, and any agreement and any amendments thereof.
I would move, Mr. Chairman, the adoption of the resolution authorizing Mr. Egan to act as the signature for requirements. I just want to say a comment. The city council, there's a portion of this here that involves the city, and the police chief brought the matter to the city council the other night, and they did approve their participation with this overall program.
Okay, all in favor, say aye. Opposed, say no. Ayes have it. Number 8.
All right, so the next item is on the same subject, and on this one I'll expand a little bit more on what the program is. We got together a broad range of stakeholders, and we started talking about issues that we're seeing in our community. And in the end, we all decided that targeting criminally or delinquency amongst our youth, school violence, drug use by our youth is important. And we don't have to put enough, or we don't have enough resources to put a significant effort in that area right now. So we made that a priority. What we're trying to do is keep our youth from becoming involved in our criminal justice system, trying to intervene early. So we're developing a program, actually expanding programs that Melody's staff already operate at Schaefer School. And it's, so you've been running about a year, right, Mel?
Yeah, just over a year.
A little over a year. It's a good program that she's running there. It's a life skills program supposed to deter youth from becoming involved in criminal activity, drug use, and so on. And then the other program we're going to do, we're going to work with Lassen Family Services and expand a program. They run this VIP program at Lassen High School. It's supposed to do similar things, but we're going to add a new module with this life skills program to that. We're going to try to expand that program to other middle schools or high schools around the county. Over the 3-year grant period, our goal is to expand this life skills program to every school in the county, including charter schools. So I think it's a good step forward for us as a county and as a community in trying to help our youth and trying to keep them from becoming involved in criminal activity. So what we're asking for you to do here today is the position is going to, or the grant is going to support one community
service officer from the city of Susanville, half-time probation assistant, and there are going to be some contracts. We have to have, we're going to have to retain a data company or someone to help us collect information related to the program that we're operating and so on. What we're asking you to do right now is appropriate $160,192 in support of the Youth Crime Prevention Program. Authorize the creation of a new budget in Fund 182. What we want to do is keep those funds in there, or those grant funds segregated, that's just to help us with tracking for grant purposes, and then also allocate a new sheriff community service officer position. So that's the action I'm requesting.
Okay, your motion?
I have a question. On the recommendation, and I was kind of curious about this, it says that the board authorizes the auditor to create, C-R-E-A-K, a new budget unit within the 182 fund in support of this grant. So I wonder what...
That's a sound auditors make when they're having something new. Sorry.
Creek, I mean, it's not like... Anyway, I just was kind of curious.
That was my typo. I'll own that one,
I was
sorry.
going to ask Diana, what's a creek? Is it something you need to do now?
Okay,
It's a
any
verb.
Okay.
I would entertain the motion.
Um,
Second. I got a second.
I had a laugh about that one.
Any more discussion?
Who was the second? Yeah.
Jeff? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, say no. Ayes have it. Mr. Egan, do you have anything?
Two quick things, Mr. Chairman. As you know, I attended the coordination council with you and Supervisor Hemphill last night. Also, Mr. Shaw from my office is now coordinating the administration of that council. And so there are some changes being proposed to how the agenda and meetings are being done. One thing that I just wanted to comment for the rest of the board that we're, I think, all aware of, that Tony was able to elicit from the Lassen supervisor the reality that we all know last night, that the issues that we have with whether it be Plymouth or Lassen are not coming from, they're not coming from the local forest. Their direction in terms of directing resources, in terms of harvesting burned over forests versus managing forests that have yet to be burned, are coming from up above, and their pound of cure instead of an ounce of prevention philosophy is coming from much higher than the local forests. And I think we all recognize that. It was nice to hear them actually explain that. The other item I wanted
Maybe some of that can be put in this Jefferson resolution.
perhaps. The other item I wanted to mention is that, as the board is aware, the NorCal EMS board did not act on the board's recommendation to approve the transportation plan on RFP last week. We've been in discussions with our staff at NorCal EMS and Chairman Pyle, County Council, and I and a few other staff members will be having a conference call with Spees this afternoon to discuss that further. Okay. Those are
I have just one thing, and it's kind of, either under board reports or back to maybe Richard, it's a kind of question, it actually ties into NorCal EMS. In my box Friday, I found an envelope, and when I got in and read it, it was a letter from Brian Gray from Mountain Lifeline, and it's requesting that, well, they were asking me, but I don't know if I'm the appropriate person, or if this would be something that would be better from the chairman or from the board as a whole, taken as a board action. But apparently, Kenton Ritz, the son of deceased flight paramedic Christopher Ritz, has submitted for a scholarship fund through the Public Safety Officers Benefit Program. This is a federal death benefit claim, and it was initiated by his mother and his grandparents. And anyway, they've submitted all this documentation, and apparently there's somebody in one of the pointed-headed bureaucrats, as I like to refer to them, in some office back east that administers this. The guy's name is J. Holmstutler from the Bureau of Justice Assistance, U.S. Department of Justice. So this guy apparently is in charge. But anyway, he needs a statement on letterhead signed by an elected official such as a mayor, county commissioner, etc., and also notarized, which states that, and the wording is here, is Mountain Life Flight is legally organized and is authorized by Northern California Emergency Medical Services to act on its behalf by providing emergency air ambulance services as its primary function to the communities of Lassen County. So it's like a certification, but I'm kind of going like, they obviously run the air ambulance out of here. Mountain Life Flight does, even though the ground ambulance has got the exclusive contract. So I don't know if that's a true statement, and is this something that the board should act on, or can I do this as one board member? Or the reason why they asked me to do it is this young man, Kent Ritz, that lives in my district, and they thought I was the appropriate person to ask.
Mr. Chapman, may I ask to field that
Yes.
and report back to the board appropriately in time?
Okay, yeah,
I
we
will
passed this
research
on.
that matter.
I just, like I said, I found it myself, and I'm thinking like, I don't know if I can do this or not. I've never had a request like that, but I think if there's anything we can do to help this young man get his, get some benefits from that tragic event.
Yes, sir.
It would be good.
Understood, sir.
Yeah,